Every night, the eastbound 1245 commuter train left Union Platform, rumbled along the river for 12 exact miles, and pulled into the terminus at 1:17. That was the official schedule printed on platforms, map kiosks, and driver tablets. Until recently, no one had reason to doubt it. Then, 3 Thursday nights in a row, the cab cameras recorded a stop that should not exist, wedged between minutes 2 a.m. and 2:03 a.m., or, more uncannily, between 12:02 a.m. and 12:03 a.m. on the clocks that followed the train's own electrical feed. Each time, doors slid open onto a platform no planner had drafted, no signal engineer had wired. Each time, passengers staggered out at the true stations, bleeding, screaming, or silent as moths, their eyes fixed on nightmares they swore hadn't happened yet. The Transit Safety Bureau dispatched me, Alice Mercado, junior field investigator with a degree in psycholinguistics I barely used, to audit the feeds, interview the crew, and compose a provisional explanation that would calm the mayor's office. I expected a glitch. Clocks desynchronized, maybe a disused siding misregistered in the GPS. What I met instead was a growing pile of police reports, stamped with words like homicide, self-harm, derailment attempt. A pattern emerged. Every name that appeared on those reports had occupied the 1245 on the night of the mysterious stop. 34 people in all. Not every rider went off the rails, but enough did that the longer list felt like a bomb we were letting tick. Some extracts from the interviews I conducted that first week. Passenger 17, David Lennox, 43, Corporate Counsel. I was checking email. Car lights flickered, and when they steadied, we weren't moving. Platform out the window said Court Station, but the letters kept melting. There was a reflection. Only it wasn't me. It was me in an orange jumpsuit, cuffed, walking into a courtroom while cameras flashed. The doors shut, train jerks, next second we're doing 40 again. I thought, vivid daydream. But 2 days later, I learned Franklin, the CFO I'd covered for, was flipping on the company. I could already feel the chains, so I went to his place with my hunting knife. Passenger 4, Marissa Ong, 19, art student. It looked like our normal King Street stop, except everything was gray, even the ads. I saw me in 10 years, hands shaking from something, begging strangers to buy my sketches. Nobody looked. When the train moved, I smashed my sketchbooks. Next morning, I poured bleach on my paints. I can't risk becoming her. Passenger 29, Omar Dawkins, 57, maintenance foreman, employee of the rail service. Doors opened. Platform number wasn't any we got. I saw myself signing a paper after my grandson's photo came up on the news, dead in some subway fire. When we got moving again, I knew the only way to save him was to keep him away from trains. So I disabled a switching relay near his school's line. Nearly got 80 people killed. My own crews fixed it before you folks traced the short to me. They weren't hallucinating only. They were glimpsing a personal horror and then detonating their lives to prevent it. The glimpses proved persuasive enough to overrule every rational safeguard we spent a lifetime erecting around ourselves. A weekend passed while I filed memos no one believed. Monday afternoon, my supervisor called. We need concrete. A passenger manifest isn't proof. Ride the 1245 tonight. Camera crew's coming. If anything happens, we'll have footage that convinces the board. That makes me an experimental subject, I said. You wanted field work, she answered. I spent the hours before midnight in central control, studying track diagrams. No siding, no spare platform, no time gap long enough for a phantom stop existed in the data. Even if the operator braked hard for 30 seconds, the timers would show it. Yet the logs measured a perfect run, speed constant, distance continuous, while cab video indisputably showed the halt. At 12:30, the film team arrived. Lior, the cameraman, and Jeanette, a contract documentarian the Bureau occasionally used for PR gloss. They were excited. I was nauseated. 12:44. We boarded the rearmost car, where door sensors historically fluttered most during the anomaly. 10 riders joined us. Insomniac students with earbuds, late shift nurses, A man in a tuxedo absently twirling his wedding ring. 12:45. Doors shut. The motion felt ordinary enough to calm me. I clipped my recorder to the overhead latch. Jeanette's wide-angle lens hunted faces, doubtless hoping someone would twitch like a prophecy in progress. 12:57. The conductor's voice announced, "Next stop Brighton." Normal milky glow beyond the windows. 12:59. The overhead clocks ticked calmly toward midnight, and I discovered I half believed nothing unusual would occur. The train's steel monotony is persuasive. It insists on sanity through repetition. Wheels clacked like old metronomes. People scrolled their phones. 12:59 and 50 seconds. A hush slid through the carriage. So thin at first I suspected my ears were popping. Then every light extinguished except, inexplicably, the digital clocks screwed above each door. Their red segments froze on 12:02, skipping the interim minute and 2 seconds it should have taken us to reach that marker. A mechanical sigh, the brakes caught. We drifted and settled. Doors parted. Platform, but not Brighton nor any station I knew. Space yawned out there. Too deep, too wide. Its concrete slick with moisture that breathed fog into the car. Lettering above the opposite wall read, "Limits End," though patches flickered and recalibrated to spell "End Limits," then simply "End." No one moved, not even the film crew. Whatever current of shock seeped off that platform pinned us in place more effectively than restraints. Out of the murk, shapes advanced. Versions of us. They weren't ghosts or monsters. They were banal, older, bruised by coming years. Their faces were lit by the same horror our interview subjects had tried and failed to describe, the bone-deep certainty that a future is fixed and cruel. I saw myself first. She, future Alice, wore the same bureau field coat, but a smear of dark blood mottled the hem, gone crusty like dried coffee. One eye looked swollen shut. She carried a file box whose label read, "Mercado, Internal Hearing, Fatalities 162. She mouthed something I didn't hear but knew. My report, if filed without context, would ground the fleet. Substitute buses would crowd a bridge they weren't rated for. It would collapse at rush hour. 162 dead, because I panicked people with the truth too soon. Right then I hated her for showing me. For boxing me into the moral cul-de-sac she herself had failed to exit. She reached toward me, not pleading, insisting. The door sensor beeped as if she quite literally might step aboard. Behind her moved other glimpses. A child whose face mirrored the tuxedoed man's features, caved by bone cancer. A nurse soaked to the knees in sewage from a flooded ER. Lior hobbling on crutches, camera arm in a sling, eyes empty. The clocks ticked 12:03. The platform flattened into black stage paint. The figures, the fog, the whole nightmarish tableau sucked outward like dust through a vent. Doors shut. Lights returned. We were in motion before we remembered how to breathe. 3 passengers vomited. Jeanette kept filming, hands trembling so hard the lens rattled. A student beat both fists against the glass screaming, "It's not real," until his knuckles split. None of us tried to intervene. We were busy reshuffling the mental deck where reality should sit on top. When we disembarked at Brighton, security escorted the group to on-site medics. I saw the tuxedoed man bolt past staff, sprint up the escalator, and vanish into night. The nurse dialed someone on her phone, repeating, "Tell central triage to go horizontal, evac the basement now," over and over. Jeanette placed her camera in my hands like it weighed 300 pounds, whispered, "I'm erasing this," and walked away. I never saw her again. The Bureau held an emergency session at dawn. They quarantined the recording, questioned each of us separately, then issued a gag order so comprehensive the mere phrase, 202 event, was classified. I suspected even the mayor hadn't been briefed. But containing the footage couldn't contain the riders. Within 48 hours, Brighton's triage nurse placed explosive charges against a hospital drainage wall, trying to drain the basement ahead of a non-existent flood. 2 custodians were injured. The tuxedoed man crashed his Maserati through a locked oncology wing to abduct a terminal patient he believed was his future daughter. Another passenger, a grad student, hacked Union Station's departure signage to loop, "There is no exit," triggering a riot. The line between preemption and provocation blurred until it shattered. The Bureau's board concluded the phenomenon itself must be neutralized. Option A, suspend the 1245. Option B, reroute trains around the time window. Neither was possible without public disclosure and a citywide reshuffling of night freight. So they drafted Option C, which read like an urban legend's laundered birth certificate. Modify onboard clocks to skip from 1201 to 1204, reasoning the event could be a quantum parasite fed by our awareness of the minute between. If the train never knew it was 1202, 1203, maybe we'd bypass the vortex. I reminded them the phenomenon had overridden the train's internal clocks during our ride. Papering over the digits would not blind whatever watched us. My supervisor pulled me aside afterward. "You saw what you saw, but we cannot ground the fleet on metaphysics. Think of the panic." "I am thinking of the panic," I answered. "We're manufacturing it by refusing to tell people why they're panicking. You're tired. Go home." I went, but not to bed. The image of future Alice haunted me like an odor I couldn't wash out. If she was right, the interim fix might set the catastrophe in motion. Retimed service delays, buses rushed onto the bridge, infrastructure collapse. Silence, in other words, could cause precisely the carnage we tried to prevent. I requested leave, got denied. So I leaked nothing, at least not to journalists. Instead, I combed the archives for precedent. Rail lines worldwide, from Tokyo to Budapest, reported sporadic lost minutes phenomena, always between 0.02 and 0.03, always accompanied by a spike in post-ride violence, sabotage, or self-harm. Reports were buried under bureaucratic palimpsest, but they formed a breadcrumb line older than radio. I traced one account to 1891. A Prussian mail train halted near a shepherd's pasture, where no gate nor milestone exists, after which 5 passengers poisoned themselves before dawn. Same minute, same pattern. I began charting the geographic coordinates of each incident, layering them over ley lines, tectonic faulting, even cell phone tower rollouts. No correlation. Then I converted the coordinates to stellar azimuths. Long shot. The stops clustered under one point of sky each year, a sliding vector synchronized to Earth's spin and revolution. It suggested we were driving through a stationary beam in space, one the Earth rotated under nightly, the way a lighthouse paints a shoreline. Whatever entity or mechanism sat out there didn't target trains. We simply intersected its glance because we ran steel through darkness at the right instant. That hypothesis opened no doors, fixed no rails. But it told me the board's plan to fudge clocks was as futile as telling a lighthouse its beam was off schedule. The only variable humans could adjust was behavior after the glimpse. The catastrophe wasn't seeing the worst future. It was trying to dodge it and thereby leaning into its jaws. What if we exploited that? Redirected the response instead of the event? I drafted Protocol Mirror Box. Each carriage would carry posted instructions. You may experience a vision between E002 and 003. It shows only one possible future. Do not attempt to avert it immediately. Observe, record, then continue your journey. A counselor will debrief you at the next station. Print the instructions in 7 languages, pair them with psychologists, install sandbag partitions on bridges during the trial window. In short, provide a pressure release valve so panic wouldn't ricochet into homicide. I presented Mirror Box to the board. They tabled it. Advertising a supernatural event invites hoaxes and lawsuits. They preferred option C, rolling out in 48 hours. That night, I boarded the 1245 again, alone. Not in defiance, call it research. I had to confirm whether the stop reoccurred if no one panicked. If I could step onto that platform, speak maybe to the presence behind the visions, plead a bargain. The car was nearly empty. A mother dozed with her toddler. 2 teens played chess on a tablet. 12:59 happened, except this time the clocks did not freeze. They marched right through 12:02 while the train kept speed. Did the board software tweak already deploy? I checked my phone. 12:02. Still moving, no flicker. Relief bloomed too easily. I should have known. 12:03 was 17. Lights failed. We braked violent enough to hurl the chessboard. When doors opened, we faced Limit's End again. Only the lettering bled fresh, dripping serif by serif. The mother shrieked. Her toddler pointed across the gap. There, on the platform, was not future mother but future child, maybe 5 years older, face mottled brown as if drowned. Bubbles of river water dribbled from her lips. Mother tried to lunge but tangled in stroller harness. Teens backed into corners. I stepped forward. I intended to speak. Instead, I gagged on coppery air. My other self awaited, bloodier than before, clutching a new folder. Final report. Bridge collapse. Verdict negligence. I whispered, "How do we stop it?" She did not answer. She tipped the folder upside down. Photos fluttered, buses crumpled, steel cables parted. Behind her, other futures exhaled their rot. The drowned child, the amputee cameraman, the suicide passenger. A sum of despair. I understood then the station was not trying to warn or bargain. It functioned like a mirror in a funhouse whose gimmick is consistency. It always shows the path of greatest fear, because that path is the shortest route to action. Fear motivates, and the station, whatever cosmic censor birthed it, fed on action, on the chaos that follows revelation. We were batteries. It sipped the energy released when humans topple their own safeguards. Recognizing the mechanism didn't disable it, but clarity can be armor. I turned to the mother clawing at the stroller. "Not real," I said. "Just possibility." She sobbed that her daughter couldn't swim. "Then teach her tomorrow," I urged. "Not tonight. Tonight we sit down." I took the stroller handle, anchored it to a seat frame. Teen 1 trembled. I pressed the emergency intercom button and spoke calmly. "Remain seated. When the train moves, we ride it out." My voice surprised me with its steadiness. It wasn't leadership. It was surrender to principles I already possessed. Patience, incremental action, systems over impulses. The very opposite of catastrophic overcorrection. The clocks hit 12:04. Platform dissolved. Doors closed. We rolled. The mother clung to her child, sobbing but alive. Teens high-fived weakly. My lungs tasted unfiltered steel dust, but I was upright. I had chosen not to choose fury. At the terminal, security pulled us aside for statements. I expected hysteria. Instead, the mother said, "Some kind of nightmare vision," then asked officers for swimming lesson pamphlets. No meltdown. Small miracle. I drafted a supplemental proposal to Mirrorbox that night. A company signage with recorded mantras, verbal first aid. I predicted incidents would drop 80%. This time the board listened. Maybe my calm transmission through the intercom had circulated up the chain, a proof of concept in human form. Implementation rolled out within a week. Conductors received scripts. Night riders found pale blue cards wedged beside seat numbers. Fear is a forecast, not a verdict. During the first trial period, 31 passengers reported visions. Only 1 acted violently, punching a wall before staff calmed him. Statistically, we had throttled the catastrophe. The 12:45 still stops where no station ought to be. We have not solved that. But we taught ourselves, if not the universe, a trick. When shown the worst, postpone reaction. Let terror cool and decide in daylight. The station's appetite seems to have diminished. Maybe it starves when panic doesn't ripen fast enough. Or maybe it merely sleeps. As for my future self, I don't know what became of her. The folder hasn't appeared in subsequent crossings. Perhaps by choosing restraint, I diverged from her timeline. Yet sometimes when streetlights blur past my window at night, I imagine a parallel train still grinding into Limit's End, where she waits, file box under her arm. condemned to witness the worst, because that is what she once showed me. I hope even she finds an exit, but if not, then I ride each midnight willing to look yet unwilling to leap, and in the space between those refusals, I like to think the catastrophe thins, thread by thread, until one night the doors will open onto nothing at all and the clocks will proceed, and our futures will again belong to us alone.